If you are interested in web development or curious about it, or wondering how you can start earning an income in the next 6 months, definitely stay tuned to this video where we will talk about what full stack development is, what the demand is like, and give you a detailed plan on how you can start earning an income in the next 6 months. Welcome to Zaio, where we take your life to the next level. Now, if you're interested in learning how to code, understanding more about the latest tech and keen to start earning an income in this field, definitely feel free to subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, and stay tuned to the videos that we publish. So who is a full stack developer? According to W3 Schools, a full stack developer is a person who can develop both client and server software, right? So when we say client, we basically mean the front end of the application. When we say server, we mean the back end of applications. So basically a full stack developer is someone who you can go to and say that, hey, I want you to build me an app similar to Uber. For example, Uber for babysitters, right? And this person will be able to build the front end of it and the back end of it. So that is basically what a full stack developer does. Now, guys, it is extremely daunting if you are a beginner to get into full stack development, right? Because you might feel like there's so many things out there, like so many languages, tools, frameworks, libraries, and you want to try to get through as much as possible in a very limited time, right? But I think the best strategy is to have a goal in mind, right? So start working towards something and have a roadmap designed for that. Focus on very specific things for those 6 months, because if you get your foundations right, then you can easily learn new things, because there are a lot of things, there are things that will make your work a lot more efficient, and you'll discover that as you gain more experience, right? But basically have a goal in mind, right? And actually start getting into it step by step with the roadmap, right? And we'll talk about a detailed roadmap like towards the end of this video, right? So that's what a full stack developer does, right? But now let's talk about what is the demand like, is it actually worth your time? Is there a good amount of money to be earned over here? Let's talk about that. All right, so what is the full stack developer job market like? Well, guys, to keep it short and sweet and concise, it is pretty damn good, right? So there are a few things that I found. For example, in the US, right, the Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts an 8% growth in the job outlook for web developers between 2019 and 2029, and a whopping 22% for software developers. Of those, being able to create and maintain a system from start to finish, front end to back end, is seriously valued, right? So that is basically something that I found. I know it's more focused around the US, but I found a few more things. For example, here are the average salaries as well for web developers, right? So according to Glassdoor, a junior full stack developer earns $72,000 a year, right? So now if I put $72,000 into South African rand, it's about R1 million a year, right? Which is pretty amazing for a junior developer. And of course, as you gain more experience, you just start earning more, right? So as you can see, a senior full stack developer earns $114,000, 114,000 times 15, which is about 1.7 million. And of course, as you keep gaining more experience, you'll just start earning more and more, right? Well, that is I feel like this is pretty amazing. It's a really good sign. And another thing that I found, according to Hired, right, engineers in smaller markets are more likely to get remote job offers compared to those in major tech hubs, right? They also receive a higher salary for remote jobs compared to local job offers. So guys, because of the nature of development, right, a lot of the opportunities can be done remotely, right? And in smaller markets, so a lot of the African markets are a lot smaller than the American markets, right? So in these markets, you can see that a lot of developers are actually getting jobs, right? Now, in 2021, back-end, full stack, and front-end engineers still saw the highest demand, making up more than half of all interview requests for software engineers, right? So that is a really, really good sign for web development, right? And also, I just wanted to put it out there, the difference between a full stack developer and an engineer, right? Because if you just look at these prices, you can see that these are the different salaries that are earned, right? Basically, someone who is a developer will basically develop applications like web applications, and a software engineer focuses on native applications. So when I say native applications, it's like, building an app for desktop, for Mac OS, building an app for iOS, right? So that is the difference between a software developer and an engineer, right? But these days, the way JavaScript is evolving, right? If you start with development, you can obviously become an engineer, because, for example, if you learn React.js, right, which is a library built by Facebook to build front-end applications, like the client-side applications, you can easily pick up React Native, which allows you to build apps for Android and iOS, right? So yeah, it's just something that I wanted to educate you guys on, right? And yeah, guys, the bottom line is that there just aren't enough graduates to take up these opportunities, right? Which is why there's so many like self-taught developers, right? Think about it. Like, there's a limited number of universities. There's a lot of barriers to getting inside universities. So there's not enough graduates to actually take up the amount of jobs that are coming out for web developers. That's why I'm sure you've seen lots of videos on YouTube, or, you've just heard from places that, people have just become self-taught developers. They don't even study anything related to do with computer science. They just become developers, right? All that matters is that you're able to show a good amount of experience, right? You must have a robust portfolio of projects, right? And this is what's going to help you land a job, right? So guys, basically, as you gain more experience, the amount that you earn will increase. So all in all, guys, I've just got to say that the scope is amazing for full stack developers, right? There's lots and lots of opportunities. And I personally, this is just a personal take, I definitely think it's going to keep increasing, right? Because especially with the uptake of Web 3.0, which is called the Internet of Blockchains, there's just a lot more apps that are probably going to be moving towards Web 3.0. And, if there are apps that are required to be built on the blockchain, you will also require web development, right, to build the front end, for example, right? Maybe and the back end will also be there, but the connections to like the blockchain and everything will happen through the back end, language, right, or framework. So yeah, that's just a personal take, but guys, I think it's a really exciting space to be in, right? So I mean, guys, if you're finding this video useful, please definitely feel free to give this video a like, so that we can create more valuable content for you guys, and reach more people, because our mission is to actually make coding mainstream, right? All right, so before we jump into the detailed plan, like the step-by-step guide, let's actually talk about the things that you have to learn, right, at a high level, okay? So firstly, the first thing that you need to do is you need to pick a tech stack, right? And I'll be jumping into that. So when we say tech stack, it includes everything, like, the front end, the back end, the database that you're going to use. So you need to pick a tech stack. Then the second thing you need to do is you need to figure out what are you going to use for back end, right? And then what are you going to use for front end? So this can be interchangeable. What are you going to use for front end? What are you going to use for back end? What are you going to use for your database? What are you going to use for version control, right? So these are things that we're going to talk about, right? So let's jump into choosing a tech stack, like at a super high level. We'll keep this quick. There are multiple tech stacks, right? So there's actually something known as the MERN stack, right? So the MERN stack stands for the MERN stands for Mongo, Express, React, and Node, right? So MongoDB is basically a database, right? Express is it's used to build, it's a framework, right? That's used with Node.js to build backend applications, right? And then React.js is a JavaScript library for building front-end applications. And then we have Node.js, right? So MERN, Node.js is for a server-side JavaScript runtime environment, right? So I know it sounds really complicated, but basically that's the MERN stack, and this is something that Zaio focuses on heavily, right? Now the other stacks include LAMP stack. The LAMP stack stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, right? So this is like a little bit old school, not there's still a lot of apps that are still built on this, but it's a bit old school, And then we have the MEAN stack, which also has a lot of popularity, which stands for the Mongo, M for Mongo, E for Express, again for build. So it's like a web application. It's a framework for Node.js that helps build backend applications. AngularJS, so instead of React, so it's instead of MERN, it's mean. So instead of React, it's Angular, right? And Angular is used to basically build front-end applications. It's built by Google, and it's actually a framework, whereas React is a library that's been built by Facebook. And then Node.js is a server-side JavaScript runtime environment, which is N for Node.js, right? So yeah, I mean, let's talk about the front end now. So, well, firstly, guys, we briefly spoke about React.js, right? It's built by Facebook, and that's what will allow us to build the client side, So there are quite a few, frameworks and libraries that you can use. The most popular ones are, React, Angular, Vue.js, right? Well, React is actually a library, Vue.js and, Angular are more of actually frameworks, right? But at the end of the day, we're achieving the same thing. Basically, the baseline is that it's all built on top of JavaScript. So if you're good with JavaScript, you can easily learn, whether it's React, whether it's Angular. If you learn one thing, it's also really easy to jump onto the other. There's basically a few CSS frameworks that you need to be aware of to just make your life easier as a front-end developer. So there's Bootstrap, there's Bulma, there's Tailwind CSS. So we at Zaio, we primarily focus on Bootstrap, right? There's also Material UI that can be used with React, for example. So there's also CSS frameworks that'll really help you make your life easier as a front-end developer. Right now, let's talk about databases. The purpose of databases is to store data, right? So we need a way to store data efficiently and retrieve it efficiently, right? And the different types of databases include MySQL, SQLite, Postgre, then there's also MongoDB, Cassandra, Apache Storm, Sphinx, right? There's a lot of options, right? The popular ones are, SQL and MongoDB, right? So SQL is basically, it's a relational database management system, right, guys? If it's getting really technical, please feel free to let us know, and we can create a separate video where we talk about each and everything, right? And then for back-end frameworks, there's basically back-end development consists of three parts, right? You got to have a server, you got to have an application, and you got to have a database, right? So basically the server, for example, will be Node.js, Express is going to be the application in which it's built, and then database will be MongoDB. So, this is what is there in backend development, right? And there's multiple frameworks that you can use. So there's Express, it's a Node.js framework. It's to build web apps with Node.js. There's Django, right? Django is basically a Python framework, and then there's Ruby on Rails as well, which is also really popular. It's based on the Ruby language, right? So it's just something to get you guys familiar with on what all the different options are there. So we can create a separate video where we go through in detail what each of these technologies do, right? And then let's talk about version control. Version control is super important. It's just a way to make sure that you're, you have a history of your code. So you're tracking your code, all the different versions, and it allows for collaboration, right? Git is the most popular one. That's what most companies, and that's what at Zaio, that's what we teach at Zaio as well, right? So yeah, those are just a few things that I wanted to go through at a high level, right, before we actually jump into the detailed plan. These are just things that you need to be aware of. So without further ado, let's actually jump into the detailed step-by-step plan on how you can actually start earning an income in the next 6 months. So now let's actually dive into the detailed plan of how you can start earning an income in the next 6 months, right? So guys, as I said, you got to have a goal in mind, right? So our goal will be to start earning an income in the next 6 months, all right? Now, you got to also have an idea of how much time you're willing to put each week, right? So if you're already working a job right now, maybe you won't be able to commit a lot of hours each week. You won't be able to commit maybe 20 to 40 hours each week. So what we are going to go with, we're going to assume that you're already doing something right now and you want to really try and achieve this goal, right? So with what you're doing as well right now. So let's assume that we are going to spend about 10 to 20 hours each week, right? I think that's a fair amount of time to spend each week. Maybe each day in a week, Monday to Friday, you spend 2 hours a day, that sums to 10 hours, and over the weekend, maybe you can sprint it out 5 hours on Saturday, 5 hours on Sunday, hit 20 hours. So obviously it'll change, life happens, but I think this is a fair estimate to go with. Now, if you're able to commit more time, the amount of time, so instead of 6 months, if you're able to commit maybe 40 hours, 20 to 40 hours a week, right? That means the amount of time to earn an income reduces, right? From 6 months to 3 months, So yeah, you got to have a goal in mind. 6 months, 10 to 20 hours a week, right? Let's talk about the learning strategy, right? This is really important. You've got to have some sort of strategy about how you're going to actually achieve this goal, something that has worked in the past, right? Something that's robust, right? So this is something that we have done with lots and lots of students, right? And it's worked for us, right? People have actually managed to get jobs through this strategy, right? So basically, first thing is you got to actively learn, right? So when we say actively learn, whether you're doing it with Zaio or you're watching videos online, make sure that you're just coding along. Like, you've got to code along, right? You've got to somehow code along with the environment. Editing team, please just pause. All right, editing team, please just cut the part. I'm going to start over with the learning strategy. All right, cool. So yeah, I mean, guys, we've got to have a learning strategy right now. This is a learning strategy that has worked for Zaio. We've been able to place hundreds of developers in jobs because of them following this strategy, right? So basically, the first thing is active learning, right? So, if you're watching a video or a tutorial on the internet or on Udemy, right? Basically, just make sure that you are actually coding along with the instructor, right? Now, in Zaio, what we've done is we've created this interactive environment where you can actually receive the code from the instructor, play around with the code, and so on, right? This is known as code pushes, right? So this will just help with reinforcing your concepts. Just make sure that it's active learning. You're not actually just sitting back and watching videos, but you're more actually involved in the learning, right? The second thing is doing code along projects, right, with the instructor. So you've got to make sure that you're coding along, right? So it's the same thing as the active learning aspect, but this is more from the project perspective, right? So there'll be times when the instructor is explaining concepts and you interact with that code, but there'll also be times when the instructor is going to be coding a project. For example, the Netflix landing page, or the YouTube clone, or the Amazon clone. So when these are projects that you can do to code along with the instructor, but you're actually adding it to your portfolio, right? So basically what we're saying here is that you're creating a project with guidance, right, from the instructor, right? Now, the next thing is solo projects, right? Now, this is where you will experience lots of difficulties, right? Because now you don't have that helping hand of an instructor saying that, okay, now we're going to do this feature and we're going to do this feature. And, you can watch the instructor's code and code along with the instructor. At this point, which we've called the project simulated courses, you are basically creating the project on your own, right? But don't worry, because we know that coding is extremely daunting. It is scary. We actually have something known as tutor support, the on-demand tutor support. So if you're ever stuck with something, you can just click that support button and you'll get help from an instructor immediately, right? Someone who's more experienced in web development will be able to get on a Zoom call with you instantly on demand, and you'll be able to get assistance anytime you're stuck with building a feature, right? So in these project simulated courses, for example, you'll build Twitter on your own, you'll build Instagram on your own, there's lots of things that you'll get to build on your own, right? But we've simulated this experience on the Zaio platform, right? So it's like how it would be in the real world, where you're working with a project manager. The project manager assigns a few tasks to you on the Trello board, and you're able to take those tasks and then move the tickets from one column to another, right? So the solo projects aspect is super, super important. I cannot emphasize this enough. This is what helped me. I think it's the secret sauce for any developer to become successful, right? Because when you're actually coding alone, you are forced to go on Google. You're forced to research on how you can find ways of making things work, right? You're supposed to get really comfortable with reading documentation, and there will be hardships, but the satisfaction is amazing when you get something right. Right. Anyways, I went on a rant there, but yeah, coding solo projects is a big part of this strategy, right? Then the next thing is actually preparing for interviews, right? And assisting in the job hunting process to finally start earning an income, right? So this is probably one of the most important parts as well, right? So this is something that we do in Zaio as well. We guide you on how you can, land a job, right? Basically, we'll guide you on where you should create your profiles, how you should create your profiles, and then while you're creating these profiles, for getting your first job, you'll also prepare for interviews. So preparing for interviews is a big aspect of landing a job, right? You've got to make sure that you have a solid portfolio. You've got to demonstrate a solid understanding of concepts, right? And this is something that we also do in Zaio. We help you prepare for interviews, right? Now, guys, I know, I'm talking a lot about Zaio, but this is something that you can also do on your own, right? This is something that you can actually figure out on your own, with online resources. It would just be simpler though if you just go. So basically the breakdown, right? The 6 months breakdown is as follows, right? So first thing is we're going to learn the basics of web development. Now you've got to make sure you have a strong foundation. So you're going to do HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Git, You're also going to learn Firebase. You're also going to learn CSS frameworks like Bootstrap, right? And if you have these basics locked down, it's really easy to jump into the advanced stuff, right? And in these basics, you're building real world projects. You're building the Netflix landing page. You're building the Google Keep clone with HTML and CSS and JavaScript and Firebase as well. You're also building the YouTube clone. You're building a Twitter clone. You're building Instagram. There's a lot of things that you're actually building, things that you can add to your portfolio, right? So it's a super important part of the journey. There's also lots of project simulated courses where you're coding solo projects, right? With tutor support. That's the first month, okay? Then the second month is dedicated to front end and back end development, okay? So now front end development will be in React, Redux, and Firebase, and back end will be with Node.js, MongoDB, basically creating REST APIs, right? So this is the MERN stack, right? We spoke about it earlier in this video. We'll be focusing on the MERN stack, right? So once you have a solid foundation, with HTML, CSS, you're able to design styles from scratch. And then your JavaScript is solid. You're able to actually, manipulate the DOM properly. You're able to, play around with Firebase. You have your version control locked down. Learning the advanced development is actually going to be lots of fun, right? Then the third thing is actually very optional, right? Zaio does provide NQF level 5 certifications, right? So you'll have to write an exam to earn a certification, but this is optional, right? This is something that you can choose to do or not, right? If the qualification really matters to you and you want something to put on your, your CV, your portfolio, definitely check it out, right? You can get a certification, qualification, and so that's a really important thing, okay? Then the last thing is interview prep and job hunting. So these are things that can be done in parallel, right? You can actually do interview prep and job hunting at the same time, okay? So this is the 6 month breakdown, okay? And now if I'm to go in detail with this, right? I'll actually, what I'll do is I'll put a link to this PDF in the description below so that you can actually check it out as well, and you can actually play around with it on your own, right? But let's actually go into a little more detail as to how we will, what are the exact things that you'll be doing. All right, so let us talk about the first month, right? The first month was, as we said earlier, is the basics of web development, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? So let me zoom in a little bit, right? So by the end of the month, you will have 6 projects added to your portfolio. So this is something really important. The entire mantra at Zaio actually is project-oriented learning, right? You're just doing projects and you're learning through doing projects, okay? So the first thing that you're going to build is the Netflix landing page with HTML and CSS, right? There's also the estimated duration for doing each of these courses. And then you're going to build YouTube with HTML and CSS. You're going to learn Git. And then this is the real world project simulated course. This is the solo project Twitter, where, you'll actually be able to have check-in sessions with the project manager. It's simulated, right? And the project manager in this case would basically be the tutor, right? And you can touch base with the tutor and so on, right? Then there's introduction to JavaScript and OOP with JavaScript, super important concepts. And then there's building the Google Keep app, right? So this is just an HTML and CSS practice course. It's optional, right? And then there's the introduction to JavaScript DOM, right? So, this is where you'll start seeing HTML, CSS, JavaScript work together. And then there's the making apps full stack. So you'll be learning Firebase, and then you'll build Instagram as well, which is the simulation, again, a solo project. And then you'll build a simple Bootstrap CV. So you're going to learn Bootstrap and you're going to build a CV, right? And with this CV, you're going to add all the projects you've done till that point. Should be a lot of fun to actually see all the work you've done in one place. So that should be super exciting. And then if we jump on to the next part, basically the next 3 months is React and Node, right? Front end and back end. So by the end of the 3 months, you'll have a solid 10 plus projects added to your portfolio. There's mini projects and there's also big projects, right? So editing team, please just... Cool. So basically in React, you're basically going to do 4 React projects and 4 mini projects, right? So you're going to convert the JavaScript Google Keep app to a React Google Keep app. Then you're going to also do React hooks with React router, and you're going to learn about hooks and router by building Amazon clone, right? Then you'll also learn a few optimization techniques to make your code a lot more efficient. And then you're also going to learn Redux, which is a state management tool, by building Airbnb. So that's another project right there. Then you're also going to play around with animations and animating React apps, libraries that will actually help with animations. Then you're also going to learn TypeScript, which has become really popular lately, and then they're going to learn about testing React apps, and then you're going to actually do the React Spotify clone as well, right? So this should be lots of fun. And then Node.js projects, you're going to do an introduction to Node, asynchronous Node, web servers and deployment. There's 5 of these projects: MongoDB, promises and REST APIs, sockets. You're also going to build a Zoom app with Node.js, right? So this should be lots of fun, lots of practical experience you're gaining out of this entire experience. And now let's go to the last part, right? So the last part is basically job hunting. Now this is super, super daunting. It's scary. Doing job hunting can be a bit nerve-wracking, but that's why, that's why we designed this entire experience at the end as well. It's to make your life easier and to be a supporting hand for you throughout this journey, right? So basically, during this phase, you will simultaneously prepare for interviews while starting to build your portfolio for assisting with job hunting, right? Depending on your understanding over the initial months, this phase can either finish as early as 2 months or take as long as 6 months, right? So that's something that you have to be aware of. You'll have to make sure that you're really on top of it from the beginning itself. And guys, it's actually a really fun experience learning how to code, right? So I'm sure you will be on top of it, and you will be able to get a job if you prove that you're good, right? So it'll require dedication, and you might have to also accept rejections, right? That is something that's going to be important in this journey. You might not fit some sort of company culture, you might not have what the company is looking for. Alternatively, as a freelancer in the starting, to gain trust with clients does take time, so it will be a bit of, you got to be a little patient in this time, right? But it'll be all worth it. If once you get your initial projects in, it'll really, really be worth your time, right? And some of the things that you'll do over here is you'll update your portfolio with the new projects added. You'll get guidance on creating freelancer profiles, building a presence in the dev communities, and then you'll also get guidance on exactly where you can apply, right? And then there's also JavaScript-focused interview challenges, because lots of companies do ask a lot of questions, you got to understand how JavaScript works. You got to understand how React works. Maybe you might be a React developer and a company is looking for an Angular developer, right? But if you show a solid understanding of JavaScript, you're able to show that you're able to learn quickly on the go. You've done so many projects, a company will be willing to hire you, right? So there's the JavaScript focused interview challenges, React interview prep challenges, then there's the Node.js interview prep challenges, and then there's the interview prep simulation with tutors. This is an optional thing. Basically, you can get on a call with a tutor, and actually the tutor will simulate the experience of an interview, right? So there'll be some sort of whiteboard setup, like a virtual whiteboard, and then the tutor will ask you a question, and then you're going to have to go through how to answer it, and the tutor will of course give you feedback, right? And then also this is something that Zaio does, referrals, right, for full-time jobs, right? If you, in the interview prep simulation with the tutors, if you prove to be really, really good, Zaio can actually put your name out there and refer you to a few companies in our network, right? So yeah, this is basically a step-by-step guide on how you can start earning an income in the next 6 months, right? I mean, yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Let us know, is this something that you think is realistic? Well, this is something that has worked with us and lots of developers that we've trained. Feel free to check out the Zaio website to get started. I will leave the links in the description below on how you can get started as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it with the the roadmap, the guide for 2022. There's a lot of opportunity, guys. The first 6 months is just the beginning, and then after that, the goal is to actually gain experience, maybe jump into blockchain development as well, which has a lot of demand there as well. So there's just a lot of opportunity here. Web development is a great place to start. Thank you so much for watching this video. If this video has given you some sort of value, please give it a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.